I've been putting together a brand new Warhammer 40,000 army along with Sean. I am doing the Kroot and Sean is doing Emperor's Children. And in that Kroot army, I have succeeded. I have about 70 Kroot Carnivores, I got 9 Krootox Rampagers, I got 4 Krootox Riders, I got a whole gaggle of characters. I have a Kroot army. But that Kroot army is just a little bit more than 1,000 points, where Sean and his Emperor's Children, well, he's almost done. Now, in my defense, the difference between an Emperor's Children army and a Kroot army is about 100 miniatures, so it makes sense that I'm falling behind, but I think I'm gonna very quickly catch up, and I'm gonna be catching up with some Tau. It is time to dip into the Tau half of this army. Oh, and I'm excited. The first Tau model that I painted up was this ethereal I did in March, and I love how it turned out. It was so much fun to paint, and attaching these drones to the model gives it so much presence. And this was gonna be my model of the year until I painted another Tau model in Shadow Sun. And this model was so much fun and turned out so good. I kind of feel like Tau might be my thing. I have been loving painting up some Tau, and the next thing on the docket is the Tauiest thing to ever Tau, a Crisis Suit team. I'm bringing the Sunforge team, the one that's spamming Meltas, and I'm gonna be building him a Cold Star Commander to go along with them. And you better believe he's also gonna be spamming the Melta guns. If Sean was bringing any tanks, those tanks would have to look out. If I can get these guys done, that'll be 235 points added to the collection, an actual healthy number of points, and hopefully it'll let me catch up to Sean in no time. Now, I've got these guys in front of me, but they're not ready to paint yet. The Crisis Suits are previously loved. I bought these from my friendly local game store's used shelf, and I've managed to get them on some of my quirky cliff bases. They just need a little last minute TLC to get them ready. The Cold Star Commander, on the other hand, is in rough shape. It's the old Finecast version, and 2 soaks in the ultrasonic cleaner has managed to knock off about 25% of the paint, and he still needs his weapons. Starting off with the team, this guy's jetpack has fallen off, so I need to fix that. And the previous owner went with magnets, which is a smart choice. The Crisis Suit team is very customizable, but I'm really feeling the Meltas, so I'm just gonna glue them together, and if I need more, I'll build more. I used my hobby nippers to rip out the old magnets, and I cleaned up the surface with a few swipes of my sanding twigs. By the way, these sanding twigs are available at EonsOfBattle.com. I mixed up some Greenaput, which is a 50-50 mix of green stuff and Milliput, and I shoved this into the holes and smoothed it out with my silicone sculpting brushes to get rid of the unsightly seam line and hole, making it like it was never there. I had to do this to the other 2 fellas as well, and once those were fixed, I put this guy's jetpack back on by drilling a hole and inserting some 1mm brass rod so that hopefully it'll never break off ever again. Now I want to fill in those same spots with some kit from the Crisis Suit sprue. I don't know what all these things are, just some kind of high-tech sensor units, and I glued these right over the green stuff. Hopefully if there's any crunchiness with my repair job, these details will help hide the crime. Now my trio of melta-toting baddies is done, it's time to figure out this commander. I have 4 fusion blasters, I just need to figure out where they go. This model was never meant to have these bits. This guy also had some magnets too, and I removed these the same way. For the top magnets, I had to do some invasive surgery to properly remove them, but while I was drilling and gouging into the resin, it gave me an idea. I took my jewelry saw and cut down into the back of his jetpack to hollow these out. Then I used my Dremel tool to grind away the inside to make room for the fusion blasters to sink in. I think this is gonna work, but one thing that won't work is his head. It looks like it was in rough shape even before I broke off the ears, so I think it's time to replace the whole thing with one of the extras from the Crisis Suit sprues. I ripped off the head and used my Dremel to clean up the neck. I left myself with a peg just in case I need a little bit of extra neck. I took the fancy new head and it's looking pretty good. I just ended up needing a little bit of extra height. I clipped off the neck peg and dremeled out the neck hole, then I stuck the head into place with a little ball of Greenaput so I can pose it just right. His head is the cleanest looking part of the kit. I attached his fusion blasters, sticking them down with more Greenaput, and I squished the blasters down into the putty with some more super glue, and he's 50% equipped. He gets to carry 2 more blasters. For the remaining guns, I attached these to the sides of his arms. He's the General Grievous of Melta guns. With him leading the unit, that's 10 Meltas. With the Cold Star Commander complete, I started putting a base together for him. He's on a big ol' 60mm base, and I threw some ultra-thin superglue and started stacking some 1/4 inch cork. I tore up and shaped it with my fingers, carving some material with a saw to get the angle right so that he's floating upright on the base, and once I was happy with the shape, I broke out my wood filler putty and lathered it up. I scooped off the extras with my finger, then with a damp paper towel I removed some more. Then with some more swipes of a toothbrush, I removed even more, letting the tips of the cork shine through and leaving the putty just in the recesses. Now I can attach my commander. I drilled up into his little Tau toes. It'll be a little precarious, but I don't have a better option, so this will have to do. I drilled matching holes into the base and then inserted some brass rod, loaded him up with some thick superglue and shoved him down. He's got a little bit of rock under his feet, and I used some more wood putty to blend this into my cork tower. Now to add some cacti. I used these epic basing cactuses to help create my Kroot's desert environment, and I used my Dremel to carve down into the cork and some thick superglue to attach my resin bits. Then I use some sandy texture paste to cover the flat ground and blend in my plants. Now my hard-hitting anti-tank crew is ready for some paint. These guys are so cool. Number one, they look awesome, but also they are awesome. This is an incredibly powerful squad. Between this gaggle of 4 guys, 10 meltaguns. 10 meltaguns. That is so many. And now meltaguns, they're not that good because they're strength 9, and so they're wounding the things that they want to wound on 5s and 6s. But these guys get reroll wounds. So all of a sudden, you got 2 tries to get one of those 5s or 6s, and that makes a big difference. Now, once these guys have wounded and they pass through the enemy's saving throws, it's D6 damage, Melta 2. Now that Melta 2 is really good, but you have to get within half range of their meltaguns to get it, and that is 6 inches, and these guys are on 50mm bases, so 2 inches, so they have an effective melta range of 4 inches. But they have an ability to go along with their reroll wounds. They get to reroll the damage die, and so all of a sudden I get 2 tries to roll really high on the damage. I might not have to take advantage of that melta, which is really good, because then I can shoot from 12 inches, the relative safety of 12 inches away, as opposed to getting right up in the enemy's face at 4 inches. This Crisis Suit team is remarkably dangerous, which is such a nice change of pace, because Kroot, not particularly dangerous, but that's okay, because I've got like 100 Kroot models whose job is to protect these guys and to let these guys scoot around the board, blowing things up every single turn. But before I get some paint on these guys, there's 2, 4, 6, 8 more models that I need to put together. Crisis Suit teams come with drones. Now these drones are not actually separate models, instead they're war gear. Each guy gets 2. And throughout this squad I have a lot of shield drones for the +1 wound, a marker light drone for making my Tau spotting rule better, and I have a couple of gun drones for shooting some piddly little shots that'll never do anything. In no time I had a proper swarm of these little floating friends, and I think to make the painting easier I'm going to put them on some brass rods so I have something to hold on to while I prime and paint them. I drilled little holes underneath and then stuck in my rods. Now, finally, after about a year, these models are ready to paint. I hit them with a black prime, and even though these models will be mostly white, I decided to give them the same bright zenithal I used on my Kroot. Starting with a base coat of fur brown, and then a zenithal from above with space dust. For my Kroot, I laid the speed paint right over these colors to get the warmth and saturation. For these clean metal Tau suits, I'm hoping that these colors will add some warmth and interest into the shadows, helping them blend in with the rest of my army. With those base coats applied, I threw some white ink into my airbrush and I sprayed this on top, doing another zenithal. I think the white covered better over the light yellow color, and it desaturated the brown, and I only sprayed it from above, so a lot of that color is still hanging around in the shadows. I sprayed a satin varnish over the models to protect these airbrush layers, and then began panel lining. Taking a black wash and a long bristled rigger paintbrush, also available from EonsOfBattle.com, and carefully drip this into all the cracks. This paintbrush holds a lot of liquid, so I could use capillary action to get the paint to flow off the brush and into the cracks on all the armor. In no time, I had my models looking like stormtroopers, and speaking of stormtroopers, I'm not done with black paint. I made myself a mix of speed paint, grim black, and occultist cloak for a colder black-blue color, and then put this all over the weapons. I also threw this onto the legs and joints of my Tauies, and I also threw this onto their tummies. Since this is an extra powerful shooting unit, I want to put some extra black onto the models. If I was painting some burst cannon suits, I would leave most of the models white. The exhaust vents of the drones and their techie insides also got this color treatment. Once this was dry, I hit the guns and dark parts with a dry brushing of gray paint and then a few swipes of light gray to brighten out the details. Now these are Melta weapons, so I want them to look like they're glowing with dangerous Melta energy. I sprayed some saturated blue paint onto the exhaust of these guns and then dipped some light blue, again using my rigger paintbrush to get the paint right into the cracks. Then I mixed up a 50-50 mix of my light blue and white paint, putting some strokes of this on the back half of each exhaust. Then coming in with a drop of white paint to put right in the back to make it look like somewhere deep in these guns there is something glowing extremely bright. The dream team is all dressed and ready to go. I now have some crispy clean white Tau bodies, and I'm going to be painting them up in the Viorlacept, which is the white with the red. This is the box art Tau, but it was not always the box art Tau. Back in the Dizzy, the box art for Tau was the Taucept. The septs are a little bit like Space Marine chapters or Imperial Guard regiments. It's the color scheme, and the name of the ochre brown color the Tau used to be was called Tau. Now it's been changed to Viorla, because I guess Games Workshop figured that white and red looks a little bit better than brown, which is kind of true. If anybody remembers, the same thing happened with Bionicles. The brown Bionicle eventually became the orange and yellow Bionicle, because I think LEGO thought people don't really like brown that much, which maybe that's true. I definitely think the white and the red looks really cool, and I also like the idea that the most un-Tau-like of the Tau are now the bog standard Tau. I hit my models with another satin varnish in preparation for some decals. These are alien barcodes, some fancy red glyphs that'll help sell the look of my extra aggressive Tau. Also this decal sheet, available from EonsOfBattle.com. I cut out some shapes and spread these over my suits, putting these bars and dots over the round shieldy things and some stripes over their left arms. I put some more symbols on their boxy chests and a nice big symbol over the shoulder pad of the Cold Star Commander. With these red accents done, it's time to really get some red on these fellas. I mixed up a dark red and I painted this all over the heads of their suits. Starting with the dark red and then moving on to highlights of brighter and brighter red until I was doing edge highlights of pure red. It was a little tricky, making sure not to get any red where it didn't belong, but I love how it's looking. And that's given me an idea. I decided to paint all their right arms red. I think for my Tau, the more powerful unit is, the more red I'm gonna use. This Sunforged squad are tank destroyers, so they get a lot of red. While I was reddening up these guys, I managed to break off another jetpack. So while I had it off, I painted the rim of the shield in red, painting some stripes of almost black and some spots of bright red, and then many layers of glazing in between to create a smooth blend. Then some edge highlights all along the rim. This turned out great, and after some more pinning, the mini was once again in one piece. I went all around on my models, finding some more spots to make red, picking out some of the segments of their thigh armor, and the Cold Star Commander got 2 red arms. Once the red was on there, I took some white paint onto a chunk of foam and I stamped this all over the minis for some paint chips. Like the red paint is weathered, letting some of that white armor show through underneath. Painting the red on these suckers took a while, and I haven't even touched the red on the drones yet, but overall I'm kind of okay with that. I'm okay splashing a little extra time on the red because everything else was pretty easy, doing the base coats, doing the panel lining, and I've only got to paint 4 of these suckers. Unlike my Crutsies where I had to paint 100, I'm okay spending a little bit of extra time on these Taui guys. And there's only a little bit left to do, chief among them, the balls. The Tau have all sorts of little techie balls and Tau symbols all over them. I hit these with a base coat of dark brass color, then moved on to a brighter highlight of a bright gold, and then a few dots of silver paint for the brightest, most reflective spots. All these balls are looking great with a coat of paint, and that's not the only thing that looks good in gold. That's right, EonsOfBattle.com. Over there we have all kinds of hobby goodies, Army Painter paints, brushes, wet palettes, base and cork, ultra thick and ultra thin super glue, and we have terrain. It's the best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month members get a credit, good for any one terrain pack we have ever made or the brand new one. New in January we have created the Tomb Library, a set of hyper advanced structures designed to quickly get a thematic defensive position up and running on the tabletop. The wall sections create an impenetrable fortress as they crackle with energy floating just above the battlefield, and following just behind are the sarcophagus, ancient tombs of forbidden power with room to display the aliens' captured trophies and macabre exhibits. This terrain was designed by us and is available at EonsOfBattle.com. With these Tau symbols all golden, I went back to the blue color I used for the Melt-A-Gun glow, and I darkened the color and put it over all the camera lenses all over these minis. Then I did a little bit brighter of a blue on the top halves of these lenses and a little dot of pure light blue for a reflective dot in the corner of each lens. I liked the look of this blue and I kept using it for the eye lenses in their heads, doing a few coats to brighten them up. Now everything on the minis is colored, I decided to finish off the bases. I started by hitting the cactuses with the dark green from my airbrush. I like the airbrush for this because of how textured and detailed the cactuses are. Then I hit them with a zenithal from above with a bright saturated green. This 1-2 punch makes the little plants practically glow. A few of the plants have flowers, and I masked these off with Silly Putty and airbrushed some pink over the petals, then dripped some watery magenta speed paint, then a dry brushing of white paint. Now those plants are done, I mixed up a watery mix of Fur Brown and Tree Ancient, and then slobbered this all over the bases, being careful around the toes of my suits and the edges of the cactuses. Once that was dry, I airbrushed a little brown speed paint to darken the edges and the undersides of my cork cliffs. Then I sprayed a little bit of space dust over top to brighten up the tops of my cork, and finally I gave the bases a dry brushing of space dust to bring out all the details of the cork and sand and get these bases looking dapper. I hit the rim of the base with some Tree Ancient brown paint, and my Tau Sunforged team is sort of done. I've got the 4 guys completed, but now it is time to work on the second half of the squad, and that is all of their little helper drones. Previously, these guys were their own miniatures on their own 32mm bases, and I'm so glad that they're now war gear because these 4 guys on their big old 50 and 60mm bases with another squad of 8 guys on 32mm bases, that's a big old footprint to push around the board. Now they're just war gear, and the way I want to represent them is I want to attach them somehow to the suits so that they're floating above the bases. It's a lot, it's 8 guys to fit on 4 models, but I think it'll work. I have the bulk of these guys done, but thinking about pinning, I want to use some more brass rod, but paint really doesn't stick to it very well. I cleaned up some fresh sticks with alcohol, then I gave them a coat of self-etching primer. This stuff is for metal, so it helps the paint really stick. I set those aside to dry, and I got to work reddening these drones. I've done this red so many times I've got it down to a science. I start out with some stripes of dark red, then some stripes of medium red, and then to fill in the rest with bright red. Then glazes of all these different layers over the spots that these colors are meeting again and again until the blend looks smooth. The difference between the brightest spots and the darkest spots are what makes the red look so vibrant, and I push that vibrancy even further by edge highlighting on some orangey paint, putting on just a little bit of this to help the red be even punchier. On the gun drones, these had some little balls that needed to get picked out with some gold paint, then I had a lovely bouquet of robots, ready for a satin varnish and some more decals. On the forehead of each drone, I put down a little symbol. On the decal sheet, I have some options. On the gun drones, I use these bigger, kinda angled squares. And for the shield drones, they each got a cute little square right on their foreheads. Then for the marker light drone, it got a funky big decal coming from the back. Once these were in place, I gave the drones a sponging of white paint for some more battle damage and to help the decals look more natural. Then I gave them another varnish to seal in all these paint layers. These sticks helped a lot with the painting, but now it's time to finally get these attached and finish these suits. I held up some drones to the Cold Start commander to see what looked good and also to get some ideas of where to hide the pegs. I very carefully drilled into the tip of the fusion blaster, sticking in some of my primed brass rod, and I made another one sticking out the side of his jetpack. Once those were in place, I painted them black. I was right, the self-etching primer is a huge improvement on the paint toughness, and I drilled matching holes into the drones and slid them into position with more super glue. This worked, so I went over all my guys, starting to load them up. I tried to put all the drones in different places and floating in different elevations to help sell that they're little friends following the Tau suits and not just some more kit bolted to the sides of their armor. In no time, I had all my little fellas attached, and it was quite the look. With the drones on there, these guys are pretty obnoxious. Look at the size of this sucker. It definitely adds a lot of mass, but these are 5-wound vehicle walkers. I feel like it's fine for them to take up a little extra room on the tabletop. With the white and the red, they're pretty intense to look at. It's kind of like zebra stripes. Like, I think the hypothesis behind zebra stripes is that predators can't tell where one of them starts and the other one ends when they're all clumped up together. And so it stops them from getting attacked. These guys, it's stopping me from being able to like see the outline of these guys. It's hard to tell where one guy's foot ends and the next drone begins. But I kind of dig it. It's kind of a lot, and these guys are gonna be really tricky to transport to and from the friendly local game store. Although these drones are on there pretty good. Let me know in the comments, what do you guys think of the sticks? They are visible, but they're decently subtle. I feel like they don't bother me too much. Previously, I've been able to have the drone touching the Tau, and so it's kind of invisible, but the drone is awkwardly touching the figure. Where these guys, I have them stood off a little bit, which sells the flying and floating better, but you do get a visible black rod, which is a little I don't know, I like it. 235 points added to the army. That brings me up to 1,535, so I am well over the hump and heading towards the finish line of actually having a Kroot army and catching up to Sean. I think I'm still behind, but I am quickly catching up, and the next step for my Kroot army is going to be some vehicles. Some really big vehicles. I'm pretty excited. Thanks for watching.